Welcome back to the cryptowrld channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now, Bitcoin is still playing out this bullish divergence as the US stock market is now bouncing from the latest oversold signal. And what helped markets over the last one day and just over the last few hours was Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve causing some bullish price action, which I'll talk about in just a moment why that is. But the price of Bitcoin is starting to run into this important area of resistance that we need to pay attention to, while the price of Ethereum is now starting to further bounce from this important Fibonacci level of support, while the price of Solana is continuing to play out this short-term bullish divergence, and XRP is also bouncing from important support heading towards the next significant resistance. So I'll be talking about all of that and more later in the video, so definitely watch to the end. First of all, just before we take a look at the Bitcoin and crypto charts today, we need to talk about the news today, because today we did indeed see a Fed meeting or FOMC meeting where the Federal Reserve made a decision on interest rates. And of course, we saw the subsequent Jerome Powell press conference after the rate decision. And as always, I shared the outcome of the Fed meeting over on my Twitter within a matter of seconds from this information being released. So if you want to get extra real-time updates throughout the day from time to time, especially around events like this, then make sure to follow me over on my Twitter or X, link below. But as you can see right here, the Fed decides to keep rates the same. No change in interest rates, which was in line with expectations. As I said before the Fed meeting over on my Twitter, the expectation is no change in rates. And I also said that close to a week ago, a few videos back here on the channel. And so due to the fact that we saw the expected outcome from this rate decision, of course, this is relatively neutral for markets because markets were already pricing this outcome in beforehand. But if anything, it's slightly bullish because anytime we see an outcome like this, it basically removes a small amount of uncertainty from the market. And when you remove uncertainty from the market, it removes a small amount of risk, which is slightly bullish. And on top of that, in the subsequent Jerome Powell press conference that came roughly half an hour after the rate decision as usual, Jerome Powell did indeed confirm that the Federal Reserve just next month in April will be slowing the pace of QT, quantitative tightening. And in case you're new to all of this, what that actually means is, first of all, quantitative tightening is simply just bearish for the markets and bearish for the economy. It's basically just there to try to slow inflation, because what QT does, or quantitative tightening, it basically takes money out of the financial system, out of the economy, and effectively just burns it. It destroys that money. It's the opposite of quantitative easing. Quantitative easing, or QE, is effectively money printing. And so for quite some time, the Federal Reserve has been performing quantitative tightening, effectively destroying money. But once again, they just confirmed that next month in April, they will be slowing the pace of QT. So slowing the pace of effectively burning money, which is considered bullish. That means more money will finally be left within the financial system. And when there's more money in the financial system, in the stock market, for example, that means more liquidity, which can help pump up prices. So that was a bit of bullish news that came out of the latest Fed meeting. And if we're taking a quick look at the US stock market today, this is on the daily time frame, looking at the S&P 500 index. And of course, just recently, we've seen a bit of a short-term bounce from the local lows at this point, also playing out an oversold signal here on the daily time frame, bouncing from oversold territories in the daily RSI for the S&P 500 index. And so, of course, as I've been saying over and over again here on the channel, the stock market and the crypto market are highly correlated. It's not a perfect one-to-one correlation, but if stocks are bouncing or if stocks are dumping, expect something similar for a lot of the crypto market. And so with stocks currently experiencing a slight bounce in the short term, this obviously is assisting the crypto market, at least in the short term. And if we're taking a look at the Bitcoin price today on this 4-day time frame, technically the super trend indicator is still sitting in the red, so not much has changed on this chart. And if we're taking a look at this weekly Bitcoin chart, of course, we're still seeing that bearish signal here in the weekly Bitcoin MACD, as I've been saying basically every day over the last 1 to 2 months now. But as I've been saying more and more just recently here on the channel, over the last half a week, give or take, we are possibly reaching a low point within the histogram, within the MACD indicator. As we can see right here, we're possibly reaching a low point, which basically means we've perhaps reached the maximum amount of bearish momentum within this bearish movement. But in order to properly confirm that, we'll likely have to wait over the next 1 or 2 weeks to actually start confirming a low point within the MACD indicator, at least on the weekly time frame, but I'm saying this in advance just to prepare you for a likely scenario that could be coming over the next couple of weeks here, possible low point within the histogram in the MACD indicator on the weekly Bitcoin chart, as I've already been saying here on the channel. And if we're taking a look at this weekly Bitcoin chart, technically we still have a massive bearish divergence, which is technically still active, which means we should not necessarily expect a significant amount of bullish momentum, at least anytime soon. But as I've also been saying over the last couple of months, even though we are actively playing out this bearish divergence, that does not mean no bullish price action. Obviously, we can see some short-term bullish price action, like bouncing from support levels and seeing oversold signals and things like that, just in the shorter term. And of course, we're currently seeing a short-term bounce, which is very normal to see. And just before taking a look at some other important Bitcoin price charts today, first, if you want to trade any of these moves in the price of Bitcoin or any other crypto, personally, I'm started to take more of my crypto trades over on 2bit, so I'll make sure to leave a link to 2bit below this video in the description and in the pinned comment. And if you use that link, it'll take you to this page right here where you can claim some massive trading bonuses, like for example, a brand new Mercedes-Benz or $50,000 in trading rewards. But if you're not one of these larger traders here to claim these massive trading bonuses, you can still claim some decent bonuses using the link below this video to 2bit, like for example, a $30 sign up bonus and also a 20% deposit rebate up to a max of 200 USDT. So for example, if you deposit just $1,000, you get a $200 bonus onto your 2bit account, but only if you use that link. And on top of all of that, you get an exclusive discount on trading fees, VIP level 1 trading fees. If you use that link, you're automatically upgraded to VIP level 1 if you simply use that link below this video to 2bit. And so if you're going to be trading crypto anyway, you might as well check this out. Once again, first link below this video. And in case you're wondering, 2bit is a no KYC exchange, which means you can access it from basically any country in the world without needing any KYC. But as always, check your local regulations when it comes to trading crypto. And for whatever reason, if you don't want 2bit as an exchange, there's also Bitfinex as another exchange out there that I also trade on. So I will also make sure to leave a link to Bitfinex below this video. And if you use that link, it'll take you to this page where you can claim an exclusive 10% discount on all trading fees forever. That massive fee discount lasts forever on your Bitfinex account, but that massive fee discount is only available if you use that link. And in case you're wondering, Bitfinex is also a no KYC exchange. But with that being said, taking a look at this daily Bitcoin price chart, and right now the price of Bitcoin is still bouncing and finding a lot of support at this 38.2% Fibonacci level of support, sitting at around 82,500. And if we're taking a look at some of the recent daily candle closes, they basically confirmed right on that 82.5k or 82.6k level, proving it as support. So at least for now, continue to expect a lot of support around 82,500 once again. And as for resistance, I would expect significant resistance in the low 90k area, like for example, around 91 to 92k. And if we're taking a look at this 3-day Bitcoin price chart, first of all, we have significant support down here in between around 70,000 to 74,000 based on previous significant resistance becoming new support. And once again, we do have support, first of all, at around 82,500 and also at around 76,000. And as for resistance, we do have more resistance at around 96,000 based on the volume profile indicator. And we also have a decent amount of resistance in the short term in between around 86,000 to 88,000 based on that latest high in the candle closes on the 3-day Bitcoin price chart, and also based on a small spike in traded volume in the volume profile indicator at close towards around 86 to 87,000. And so at least in the short term, expect some resistance around that area. But honestly, if we start breaking out above around 87 to 88,000, in that case, expect a continued relief up towards basically the low 90k area. And then in that low to mid 90k area, expect significant resistance around there. And of course, on the daily time frame, we're still currently playing out that bullish divergence, as I've been saying every day for around a week now on the channel. Expect a slight bullish relief, or at the very least, a bit of choppy sideways price action. So basically a break or a relief in the short term from all of the bearish price action. And so far over the last 1 week, this has been perfectly playing out as expected. And as I've also been saying pretty much every day over the last 1 week, usually a bullish divergence on the daily time frame plays out over a couple of weeks, give or take, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, but usually a couple of weeks before it starts to lose relevance. And so far it's been roughly around 1 week, which means it is likely it will continue to play out for at least the coming days, once again possibly the coming week, give or take. And if we're zooming further into the short term, taking a look at the 4-hour Bitcoin price chart, obviously over the last couple of days we started breaking towards the downside and technically confirmed a couple of candle closes towards the downside below this ascending line of support for this rising wedge pattern here in the shorter term, because that support line was sitting at around close to 83,000. But like I explained in my last video, if we simply just break out back above that level, back above this line on the price chart, then that would simply invalidate the break towards the downside and invalidate this price pattern altogether. And so that's simply what we ended up doing. Obviously we broke out back above that line, which invalidated the break towards the downside. And so obviously this is why we also need to consider other Bitcoin price charts, not just rely everything on one singular price chart. So for example, as I've been saying every day over the last 1 week, we do have a short-term bullish divergence telling us to not really expect significant bearish momentum just in the shorter term, and that we're likely going to see a bit of a relief in the short term. And so in other words, this is telling us that we should not be overly confident in major bearish moves, at least in the short term, the same way as this larger bearish divergence on the weekly time frame is telling us we should not necessarily be confident in a significant bullish move on the larger time frames, bullish momentum here on the larger time frames. And so that's the current situation for the price of Bitcoin. And if we're taking a look at the Bitcoin liquidation heat map, we still have a lot of liquidity sitting in between around 71,000 to 74,000, and also a decent amount of liquidity still building at close to $100,000. But obviously between now and then, we do have a decent amount of resistance, which we cannot ignore. As always, we cannot ignore support and resistance. And if we're taking a look at Ethereum on the weekly time frame, technically speaking, despite the current short-term bounce, the larger price structure is still currently bearish for Ethereum on the weekly time frame. But if we're taking a look at this 3-day Ethereum price chart, obviously the short-term bounce is continuing from this important 78.6% Fibonacci level of support sitting at around 1870 to 1880. So like I've been saying since before this bounce, expect a decent amount of support around there, just below 1.9k. But if we actually break further towards the downside and actually start seeing candle closes below that level and fail to get back above that level by flipping it into new resistance, for example, in that case, the next significant level of support towards the downside would be sitting at just above 1.5k. But obviously in the meantime, we're still finding a lot of support in that high 1.8k area, just below 1.9k. And as for resistance, if we continue this short-term bounce, I would expect a lot of resistance in between around 2.1k to 2.2k. But if we can finally start seeing a breakout back above this golden pocket area of support, which should now be acting as resistance, if we can break out back above that area, so breaking out above 2.2k with confirmation, so holding that as support, in that case, we can finally start to flip a little bit more bullish again, at least in the short term, talking about the coming days or weeks. If we break out above that level, potentially expecting a move up towards around 2.5k or even 2.8k. Obviously, if we first actually confirm a breakout above around 2.2k, but in the meantime, expect a lot of resistance at 2.1k to 2.2k. And as I always say, Ethereum will likely follow similar price action to what Bitcoin is doing. So obviously not the exact same price action, but if Bitcoin plays out a bit of a short-term bullish relief, or if we ultimately see another dump again, expect something similar for Ethereum. And with that being said, if we're taking a look at Solana on the weekly time frame, it's a similar story for Solana as what I just said for Ethereum, because technically speaking, the larger price structure is still currently looking more bearish than it is bullish, considering this massive rising wedge pattern is still technically actively playing out. It's just in the short term, as of right now, we are taking a bit of a pause from the rising wedge playing out due to the fact that we're currently running into significant support and bouncing from significant support sitting in between 120 to 130. But obviously I've been talking about this happening for almost a month now on the channel. Since all of this actually played out, I've been talking about how we'll likely see a move down towards this area right here and bounce from this area since the price first broke below around 170. And so this is still playing playing out pretty much exactly as expected. And if we're taking a look at the daily time frame, of course, right now the price of Solana is still actively playing out this shorter term bullish divergence, which means we're likely going to see either a slight bullish relief or just some choppy sideways price action as the most likely outcomes or most common outcomes from a bullish divergence. And so right now, everything's still perfectly playing out as I've been saying it will. And usually a bullish divergence on the daily time frame plays out over a couple of weeks, give or take. And so as of right now, it's been around 1 week, which means this will likely play out for at least a little longer, maybe over the next few days, maybe over the next week, that sort of time frame. And if we're taking a look at the price of XRP on the 3-day time frame, technically speaking, this larger bearish divergence on the 3-day chart is still technically active. It is actively playing out, as I've been saying for months now on the channel, since much higher prices all the way back up here. So technically speaking, like I've been saying since back then, we should not expect a significant amount of bullish momentum anytime soon. But of course, we can see some short-term bullish price action here and there, just not necessarily massive high momentum towards the upside. And so this is still currently playing out, as I've been saying for months now on the channel. But if we're taking a look at the 8-hour XRP price chart, in the shorter term, we've actually seen a bounce and a retest from previous resistance, flipping it into new support, which is obviously bullish price structure. The fact that we actually held this area and actually reclaimed this area, bounced from this area, this is very good news. This is good to see, at least in the short term for XRP, as I've been saying here on the channel. And the area I'm talking about, by the way, is sitting in between around 225 to 230, give or take. And so right now that is acting as support. And now that we've actually broken out just above $2.50 in that high 240 area, around 245 to 250, I would expect a bit of short-term support around there if we come back for a retest. And as for the next resistance to watch out for, we'll likely find significant resistance in around the mid $2.60 area, so around 265, going all the way up towards around $2.80 based on previous significant resistance. And we also have a lot of resistance at around $3 if we first break out above this area. And we also need to pay attention to the RSI, because right now the RSI is approaching overbought territories. And the last couple of times we actually confirmed an overbought signal in that 8-hour XRP RSI, we did indeed see a short-term peak in the price. So just keep that in mind. But obviously right now we're not yet in overbought territories, which means the price still has a little bit more room towards the upside. But potentially as we get closer towards this resistance, the RSI will get closer towards overbought, telling us that maybe soon, potentially after a little bit more of a pump, we could be due to see a little bit more of a cool off. And once again, if Bitcoin's bullish in the short term, expect some bullish price action for XRP, and vice versa. If Bitcoin ultimately has another dump, expect something similar for XRP. And if we're taking a look at the price of Chainlink on the daily time frame, Chainlink is still perfectly playing out this shorter term bullish divergence, as I've been talking about here on the channel, telling us we're likely going to see a slight bullish relief, or at the very least a bit of choppy sideways price action. So basically a break or a relief in the shorter term from this bearish trend. But a bullish divergence by itself is not necessarily a bullish trend reversal signal. And so, for example, it is possible to actually play out the bullish divergence with a bit of a relief and then ultimately continue the bearish trend later on. That is a possibility that we need to consider. But bullish trend reversal signals that I'll be watching out for are signals like, for example, a confirmed breakout above critical resistance and actually holding that resistance as a new support and forming some sort of significant higher low on the price chart. Those would be bullish trend reversal signals that can help to actually confirm more of a bullish trend starting to form. But at least for now, as of recording this video, it's still too early to tell that a bullish trend reversal is actually happening right now. We've not yet fully confirmed any significant bullish trend reversal signals, but we are currently testing this previous golden pocket area of support, which will likely act as strong resistance, sitting in between around $14.90 to $15.50. So roughly around $15, give or take. I would expect a decent amount of resistance around there. But if we can actually start breaking out above $15 and especially above $15.50 and actually hold that as new support, that is what I'll be watching out for to possibly start calling for more of a bullish trend in the next few days, weeks, or possibly months, if we can actually see that signal confirm. Because in that situation, the next important resistance towards the upside would be sitting at around $17.50 approximately. And if we break out above that level, that would be extremely bullish, because we would also be possibly forming some sort of inverse head and shoulders pattern in that situation, which is also a bullish technical pattern. But obviously right now it's still too early to tell if that will definitely play out. We're just possibly at that first testing point point for a bullish trend reversal signal. But if we fail the breakout here and we actually find resistance here and reject from this golden pocket at roughly $15, give or take, 15 to 15.50, in that case, the next important support towards the downside is sitting at around 1270 to 1280, give or take, based on this Fibonacci level of support, which is pretty much exactly where we bounced from based on the daily candle closes. And once again, if you want to trade any of these moves in the price of any crypto, check out the links below this video to those exchanges if you want to claim those massive bonuses that are only available using those links. And if you want to actually know how to trade crypto for yourself, no matter what the price is doing, then make sure to watch these videos popping up right here on your screen, because the video in the top left shows you how you can profit from bullish or bearish price action using long positions or short positions, and the video in the bottom left shows you how you can easily profit from choppy sideways price action. But anyway, that is everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.